Tonight, we're talking all about classroom discussions, and specifically how and why that impacts your reading comprehension, and how you can truly have really powerful and deep discussions with your students, how to get those going, what strategies and stuff you can have kind of in your back pocket to get your students talking more and get you talking less. So again, my name is Sierra Harris. I am the author at Adventures of Room 129. And I go live every Wednesday night and talk about all things comprehension. So if you're tuning in for the very first time, you're going to want to go and check out all my videos over on the videos tab of my page. Let me know if you have help or need help finding those, but I can absolutely help you there because there's lots of great videos that you missed. So you're going to want to see those. So classroom discussions can be wonderful. They can be a fantastic strategy and tool that you use to increase engagement, to get your students, interacting with one another, interacting with content. But they also can be a horrible thing if they blow up in your face, which, hello, I've been there, and I'm sure all of you have been there too, right? Students arguing, they're talking over one another, or you get the complete opposite where it's completely crickets. Right? They just don't really know how to carry on an actual conversation. They may answer the question and then it's, nothing from there, right? Oh, I hate it when that happens. So tonight we're going to talk through some strategies and some tips that will help power you through either of those scenarios, and also give you some amazing strategies that you're going to be able to put in your back pocket and use at a moment's notice when you are wanting to have a rich and strong classroom conversation with your own students. So if you haven't already found it, over on the side, I have created for you a classroom discussions guidebook. This guy is full of amazing information. A lot of the information we're going to be talking about tonight is in here, as well as some great freebies for you. So you're going to want to go and grab this. You will need to put in your email address, but I promise if you're already a subscriber, don't worry, you're not going to get double emails from me. You'll be fine. So you will just put in your email address and you'll be able to download this right away. But like I said, this has great information in it, all the tips and tricks, and all 10 of the classroom conversation strategies that we're going to be talking about tonight are all in here. The other link that I have over on the side are my engagement strategies cards. There are over 60 unique ideas that get your students involved, discussing, and engaged in your lessons as well. So if you want more after tonight, definitely check that link out as well. So let's really get started. So classroom discussions. I have kind of segmented tonight's information into 3 different parts. So the first thing we're going to go through are like kind of some beginning tips. Like if you're just getting started with classroom discussions, what are some of those beginner tips and things that I need to be focusing on? And I do realize that it's April. I realize that it's the end of the year. And I realize that many of you may not be new to classroom discussions. However, these beginning tips are great to go back through and make sure that we've built a solid foundation of discussions for our classroom. Because without all of these, then when we go to try to throw in a classroom discussion, that's when the hot mess starts to happen. So we're going to go through these beginner tips. After that, I've got some more advanced tips. So if your foundation's built and you really got classroom strategy or classroom discussions going, you kind of want to fine tune it, I've got some great tips there for you. And then I have 10 different strategies that we're going to go through very quickly. But like I said, all the information for those are in your guidebook that you can download for free tonight. So you're going to want to make sure you grab that. So we're going to go through the 10 different conversation discussion strategies at the very end as well. Okay? All right. I hope you're super excited. If you haven't already, drop me a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know what grade you teach, where you're from. I love hearing from you. And we're going to go ahead and jump in now to our beginning tips for classroom discussion. So the very first thing that I tell teachers who are really wanting to focus more on getting their students to talk is to not assume that your students know how to have a conversation. And that kind of takes them off guard for a minute. They look at me, they're like, well, I have conversations with my students all the time. There's a difference between having an academic conversation and having an informal conversation as well. Academic conversation and informal conversation, very different. So you've got to make sure that you are taking time to explicitly teach these types of communication skills with your students. So at the beginning of the year, when you're really starting to get into your groove of your reading block, whatever that looks like, make sure you're taking time to actually teach them what a conversation looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, and then also, and we're going to get to this in a second, kind of what to do when problems occur. So you want to make sure that you're covering all of that ground, because if you don't, then you're just assuming that kids can sit there and have a discussion about a book when in reality, they probably may never have had a discussion over a book. So make sure you stop and teach the communication skills that you are expecting of them in these discussions, okay? Another tip is to make sure you are focusing, and by you, I mean you as the teacher, you are focusing on your questioning. Questioning is the heart of a discussion. It is all about the questions. If you ask the wrong type of question, if you ask a too narrow of question, and if you ask a very closed question, your discussion is going to go nowhere. So you need to put a lot of thought into what types of questions you are going to be asking during discussion. They need to be broad, they need to be deep, they need to be open-ended. And I did a really great video a few weeks ago about asking open-ended questions in comprehension. So if you want that link and you don't know where to find it, comment below and I will get you the link so you can go back and watch that video as well. So it's all about the questioning. Make sure that you have those deep, open-ended questions prepared in advance so you know your students are going to have a lot to talk about. Because if they don't have a lot to talk about, then there's no discussion happening at all, right? Okay, so another tip for getting started with classroom discussions is make sure you have outlined very clear expectations of what you expect during the conversation, okay? So we already talked about making sure that you're teaching them these strong communication skills, but that's a little bit different from the expectations. So what do you expect of them? Do you expect eye contact? Do you expect hands being raised? Do you expect everyone to contribute at least, 2 thoughts or 2 questions or whatever it may be? Every expectation from teacher to teacher can be different, and that's fine. But make sure you know what your expectations are before you start doing this, and then make sure you communicate those with your students. They kind of need to have like this mental checklist in their mind. That way, when they're in the midst of the conversation, they can be kind of going through those things. All right, I'm listening to the speaker. I've got eye contact. I've contributed once. All right, I've contributed twice. Whatever the other things are that you're wanting to kind of put on that list. And then they know in their mind that they're meeting your expectations. If you don't go through those and they're just kind of sitting around talking, then, they really don't know in their minds, are they doing a good job of having a conversation? So clear expectations are definitely needed. Along with that, make sure you have a very clear and specific focus for the conversation. This kind of goes back to your questioning. You want to make sure when you're thinking of your questions that you are going to be asking during the discussion, that you don't have questions from all across the board when it comes to like reading skills and reading strategies. So I'm a very firm believer of making sure you have an objective in your lesson. So it kind of goes along with that. Make sure you have an objective for your discussion. What are you trying to get out of this discussion? If you're just having kind of a willy-nilly talk, yeah, that's great. And yeah, it may seem like a really good discussion, but are you truly digging deep into the text? If that's what you want out of this, if you want those students to walk away with that in-depth text experience, then you want to make sure that you have that very specific focus on what you're talking about. So your questions need to align to that, and you need to communicate that focus with your students as well, okay? Something else you can do, and this is great to have for all of your students, whether they're very good at conversing naturally or whether they're a little bit more timid or shy, is use sentence stems for your students. And this is actually called accountable talk. And in your freebie tonight, if you download this, your very last page are accountable talk bookmarks that you can print out, you can laminate, and you can give to all of your students. And then this is something they can pull out of their folder or wherever you kind of keep those kind of important papers that you don't want to throw away. They can pull this out, and when they're having a discussion with their fellow peers, they've got this to rely on. Now, there's so much more that can be added to this. These are very basic sentence stems, but what it does is it teaches your students how to interject. It teaches them how to disagree, how to kind of ask questions, how to ask people to verify the information that they are giving. Can they give evidence? It teaches them that kind of academic conversational talk. So this is something, too, that you would want to use and focus on when you're explicitly teaching those communication skills right at the beginning of the year when you're getting started. So, like I said, this is a part of your really awesome guidebook freebie that you're going to want to go and download, all right? And then I have one more beginning tip before we kind of get into more of some of the advanced tips, is make sure you are giving your students time to brainstorm. So don't just throw your students to the wolves, and by wolves, I mean the discussion. Every student, whether they are higher or lower ability, does not matter. They need time to think. So if you're going to focus on a certain set of questions that you've thought through, you know they're deep, you know they're very open-ended, you're going to get a great conversation out of them. Give those questions to your students beforehand and let them think them through. They can jot down notes. They can draw pictures if they need to, whatever they need to do to think through those questions before they jump into the conversation. Because what's going to happen? You're going to jump into the conversation, and those students who love to overtake conversations, and you know who those students are, right? They're going to overtake the conversation while the other students are sitting and actually doing the thinking. You don't want that to happen, because then all the good stuff has been spoken for, and then your students who they haven't had a chance to even speak yet, all the good points are taken, and what's kind of left. So give everyone a chance to think, give everyone a chance to brainstorm, and then let them start the conversation. And that can be anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on how much time you're going to be spending actually in the conversation. So those are my beginning tips. I hope you're loving them. But let's transition a little bit into now some more advanced tips. So if you are kind of, in the realm of having great conversations with your students, then these are going to be some things maybe you can do to amp it up a bit, okay? So one of my favorite things to do with classroom discussions is to give students a job, or you could also give them a role. So I have as well, part of your freebie tonight, I'm going to keep pulling this thing out because it's loaded. It's the second to last and third to last page, I believe. But these are classroom group role discussion cards. So there are 8 of them. Typically, you would never have a group of 8 discussing, but if you did, that's fine. There are 8 different roles. But you can see on here, each of these cards has a different job. And so what that does is, instead of just having, a more relaxed conversation, it gives your students a very focused job or activity or purpose for the conversation. What are they there to do? Not only are they there to, meet the expectations of the conversation, which may be, they need to ask one question, they need to contribute 2 thoughts, eye contact, whatever those expectations are that we just talked about. But they also have this job, and this job is going to make sure that they are accountable. It's going to make sure that they're focused in on the conversation, and it's not going to work without them. They hold a part of the weight in the conversation. And I love that, because then my students can't get by with just doing like the bare minimum expectation and then kind of sitting back and let everyone continue on. This really kind of amps it up and really gives them a sense of purpose. Another really cool thing I like, sorry, I got a nose itch, is I love to give them these cards and tell them it's a secret mission. So I will fold up their card and I won't let anyone else know what their job is. And they can't tell either, right? They can't tell anyone in their group either. And then just naturally through the conversation, they do their job. And what's really cool about that is now, after a while of doing that, my kids kind of catch on to the roles, and that's fine. But it gives that sense of it, really excitement, that secret mission, and I've got to do this. So it kind of puts them on the edge of their seat. But it also, it takes that, oh, this is my job out of it. I have to do this. Instead, it's, oh, I get to do this. This is my mission. It just kind of puts a different spin on it, and it makes it a little bit more fun. So you can kind of make these your secret mission cards as well if you want to. All right. So another and more advanced tip for classroom discussions is, and you probably have heard this, so really not a tip, trick, whatever. But you, yes, you, I'm looking at you, teacher, stay out of the discussion. So I say this is a more advanced tip because in the beginning, when you're getting started, you need to be there to really make sure you're helping give support to students when those lulls kind of happen and try to get them amped up and keep going. When you get that going and when you teach those students to be able to have those conversations and they know what to do when a lull happens, then you're not needed anymore. Stand back and let them have it. Let them do it. Okay, they're going to get more out of the conversation if they are the ones in charge than if you are constantly hovering over them. Now, that doesn't mean go sit at your desk and eat a piece of chocolate, right? Instead, you can be walking around and taking a lot of great observation notes. You could be writing down things like things that they don't understand still, things that you need to clarify, certain vocabulary words that students are using incorrectly, or, anything. You can get so much data from that conversation that you are now listening instead of being a part of, and then you can use that to tailor mini lessons for the next day or, whatever. So definitely make sure you are no longer a part of that conversation. All right, another tip is to let students decide on what the questions are. Student choice is a great way to really get students motivated in the conversation. And it's also a really great way to kind of see what they've got up there as far as being able to ask questions. Now, I understand that if we're talking about second graders, first graders, even third graders, they may not come up with the best questions. So maybe not them coming up with questions as far as the choice goes, but maybe you have pre-thought through 6 different awesome, focused, open-ended, deep questions. And you put them up on the board. Let each group decide what they want to discuss. What does group A want to talk about? What does group B want to talk about? Because if they're all focused on one objective, it doesn't matter what question that they answer or questions that they answer, they're going to get the same concept and feel of the conversation that they need to. So give them lots of choice, all right? This is one of my favorite things. When you are getting going with conversations, okay? So you're getting there. You're maybe not to the point yet that you can completely step out like we just mentioned. But one thing to make sure that you're doing with your students is to take the time to remind them of all of the different ways that they can contribute. So sometimes students kind of get into that rut and they're like, they really don't know how to interject or what to say. So they may just need a quick reminder. So you can make a little visual. What I usually do is make an anchor chart with my students, and I'll put it up and I'll take it down maybe a month after school starts. And then maybe a month later, we remake the chart together. I don't just put it back up. We literally remake it. But on this chart, what we'll do is we'll talk about all the different ways that students can make a move in the conversation. They're called conversational moves. So a student can ask a question. A student could ask the person speaking to give evidence to support their answer. A student could make a connection to what's happening in the conversation. A student could disagree with what's happening in the conversation. So these are all different moves that a student could take. So it's not just about finding more to contribute on topic. There's so many other different types of moves, and students may just forget what all those moves are. So one of my more advanced tips is to remind them of those moves. So don't just wait for an opportunity to add, part 2 or part 3 to the conversation. Add more to part 1, even though part 1's been spoken for. What could that look like? What does that feel like? Okay. And then make sure your students know also what an acceptable struggle is. We kind of talked a little bit at the beginning about what conversational lulls and struggles look and feel like, right? But it's okay to have those. And you kind of want your students to have one because you want them to be able to get out of it. Okay, what is an acceptable struggle? And how do they get out of that without you? Okay, with you and without you, but what does that feel like? What does that look like? And then how can they use that to their advantage? Okay. All right, so we just went through a ton of tips for classroom discussions. Beginning tips, more advanced tips, and I'm super excited to get into this part of the night with you, which are my classroom discussion strategies. So I told you that I would have 10 different unique strategies to get your students talking more, and here they are. So you can see here that there are not 5, but 10 awesome strategies that can be done in reading. They also can be done in math and science and history, any subject, any grade level. So I'm not going to go through these tonight because technically I'm at my half hour already and I don't want to keep going on, but I want to show you that these are all in your download, all in your freebie, and they are amazing. So you're going to want to download this and grab it. And you know what? I would even print these and kind of staple them in my plan book or in my binder somewhere. That way I have them and I can kind of be very upfront and purposeful about writing them into my lesson plans. So one of my favorite ones that's in here is the Save the Last Word. And it's a super easy one, especially if you're just getting started with using different kinds of strategies like this. And so basically what you're doing is when you're starting a new class discussion in small groups, whoever starts the conversation, they start, but they are no longer allowed to contribute. But what they have to do is they have to be listening the entire time because their job at the end is they have to summarize everything. So they have to they're saving all their extra thoughts for the last word. So it's a great job for maybe one of those students who likes to just talk over and over and over and over everyone and like they over contribute. But it's also a really good job for a student who maybe doesn't have as much to contribute because they get kind of the first word. So if you give them that wait time and they've got some great thoughts, they can share those. And then they get the chance to just sit back, but they have to be listening. And then at the very end, then they have to recap everything that's been happening. So that strategy is really cool because it can go for your more advanced students and for your struggling students as well. But like I said, 10 different strategies. There's one called speed dating. Buzzwords is one of my favorite ones. Stoplight discussions, top 3. I tried to make sure there's ones in here that maybe you've never heard of, by the way. Facts of 5. Colored conversations is one of my favorites. Fishbowl, hot seat, and snowball discussions. So 10 unique strategies that are in the freebie for you that you can use. Again, any content area, any grade level, you will love these. So we talked about beginning tips for classroom discussions. We talked about advanced tips for classroom discussions. And we just talked about, or I showed you, where you can find your 10 unique classroom discussion strategies that you're going to want to have in your back pocket. And they're great because if the normal just let's sit and talk or it's not working, this is going to help spice it up. This is going to help get your kids moving, talking to more than just, their group, pairs, large conversations, small conversations. It works with all of them. So it's a really great tool to have all of these strategies in your back pocket. And like I said, if you want more strategies, I have a resource for you. The second link over in the information is a link to my engagement strategy cards. And these are discussion engagement strategies. And there's over 60 of them. And you are going to want those. I cannot tell you how much teachers love having them. They're cute cards. You cut them up. You put them on a ring. You keep them near you. And you can use those strategies at any given moment. And they make lesson planning so much more fun. So definitely check out that link and go and grab those if you have not already. I'm going to leave it at that. I really hope you got some great information about classroom discussions and how important these are to really benefiting all of your students when it comes to comprehension. I know we didn't say the word comprehension a lot tonight, but like I said at the very beginning, if you are not having rich discussions about your text that you are reading, then you need to start now because this is the way that students truly are going to be impacted when it comes to their level of understanding of comprehension. They need to be listening, they need to be questioning, they need to be analyzing, evaluating, and talking about that text. So hopefully a lot of these tips and tricks tonight will help you really amp up your classroom discussions. Of course, if you have any questions or comments about anything tonight, please leave them below. I'll be happy to go back and answer all of them. And again, I'm so sorry for all the tech problems that we had, but I hope you found me. I hope you enjoyed tonight, and I thank you very much. Join me next Wednesday, again, 8:30. I'll be right here for our next Adventures in Comprehension Facebook Live video. And it is good night to all. Thank you so much.